Welcome to the Sisterhood Collective podcast, where we empower women to break barriers, overcome limiting beliefs, and achieve true success. I'm your host, Laurie Lauren, entrepreneur and founder of 5 successful businesses. Join me as I share proven strategies, interview inspirational leaders, and provide behind-the-scenes insights to help you level up in your business, career, and in life. Because together, we can get further faster. Okay, let's dive in. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about something that's happening in my life right now. Ironically, I just let go of a staff member. And I thought I would share this with you because getting rid of a staff member can be tough. It's one of those tough conversations nobody wants to have. We have these, sweaty palms and, you worry about, well, I certainly worry about, you're impacting their livelihood. So I worry about where they're going. I thought I'd like to share a little bit about the importance of having a right team, and then a little bit about my experience at going through this, because I have had to let people go quite a few times. But I want to also say to you why you should let go of people. Like, what are the reasons when it's time to make a change, whether it's in business or the workplace, or maybe it's even in your friendship group or just in your surrounding group or circle. For me, the reason I want to have the right team in any of my businesses is because it's literally crucial for my business success. And I believe this. It will determine the outcome. I really believe that values must align. And when I'm generally hiring someone, my number one go-to is personality. I need to create the right dynamic between my team members and also myself. And someone once said to me, actually, if you could go on a road trip with this person and you could, continue this conversation with them on a road trip, then they're probably a good fit. And so initially when I first started in business, that was kind of my determining factor. Anyway, I digress. But personality, firstly, is very key to me before I look at skills. And even a CV, when I look at that, again, for me, experience matters. Life experience, not just on the job experience. And of course, this depends on the job as well. But I also believe passion is important, because I believe that passion creates productivity. And I think skill elevates your team. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those 3 things. But let me tell you the story of what happened just recently for me. It's very simple. This staff member had poor communication in the fact that they didn't respond to the messages, which therefore meant that we had unreliable staff member on the roster, which meant that it was everybody chasing their tail to fill the position and carry someone else's workload, which impacted people's time, including mine, and of course, business productivity, and also the vibe amongst the staff, because it impacts everybody when these sorts of things happen. So poor communication. And unfortunately, in this day and age, the old ghosting doesn't just happen on the dating and the dating apps. It seems to happen in the workplace. They just feel like if they don't want to answer the question, they just won't answer the question. And the next thing you know, they've just ghosted you on that specific question. I've had that happen before too, which I imagine, like most of us, absolutely frustrates me. Just answer me and say, I don't have an answer for you, or, hey, we're not the right fit, or this isn't for me. Like, say anything, but don't ghost somebody. I kind of find it a little bit disrespectful. So that was the first thing in this particular case. And then the second part was just poor performance, not wanting to be retrained in any way, and then not delivering the standard required for that particular skill, which I believe that, it's your credibility. Like, if you've got a standard, you don't drop your standard for a staff member to fill in or to have a Band-Aid. I'd rather go and, work in the position and hustle for a few weeks to not have a Band-Aid fix, but to have the right fix, the right person doing the right thing to, you work hard for your brand and you work hard for your credibility. So I don't think you should let anybody, take that away from you. So that's kind of what happened for me really recently. And so I thought I'd talk a little bit about that. And the reason also is because it actually kept me up at night and working out how I was going to manage the fix As entrepreneurs, we are problem solvers. We always find the answer. And although you can go to bed stressed at night, it's always by morning you find the solutions. And that's happened in this case, thankfully. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit was recognizing when it's time for a change, whether that's firing somebody, moving somebody on, or maybe even restructuring your business. And so the first two, which was literally what just happened for me, was the decline in performance, or in this case, it wasn't even there necessarily to begin with, but you give people the benefit of the doubt to start with. And I think if you notice any sort of decline, or you're getting feedback from customers or clients, or even team members, it's a sign that they may not be, if they've been there for a long time, they just might not be motivated anymore. Or if they're newer, they just might not be capable of meeting the demands of their role, which, as I said, was the most recent situation for my staff member. And the second reason it's time for a change is communication breakdown. And in this case, I had all the ghosting, really poor communication, took 4 days to get back to me, from that initial conversation, which absolutely grind my goat, as you probably could imagine, anyone that knows me. Especially when you're an entrepreneur, you're managing and juggling so many things. You need answers to make decisions. It's all about decision making, right? That's our role as leaders. So the communication breakdown is important. And in fact, actually, it's interesting because I talk to my mentees a lot about communicating, and any business needs some sort of leadership or a face. And part of that is the person who communicates the vision and gives people, hey, this is even what we're doing this week, or this is what I need for you to do. Or then when you allocate a task, following up that task. And I'm talking a lot about that now because one of the solutions that I'm saying to these people to create their own leadership within their own business is start writing a weekly message to your staff members. Now, we use Slack, but back in the day, when I was working overseas, I still wanted to communicate with my staff just to let them know that I'm still thinking about you guys and I still care about what you're doing and don't think that I've just run off and left you here. So I would do a weekly voicemail message on Facebook Messenger back then. These days, like I said, we use Slack. So I encourage these mentees of mine to, whatever mode that you're comfortable in, whether it's a written message to all the staff, or if it's a voicemail or even a video message. But just at the beginning, it gets hard, right? You may not even know what to say. And I'm like, don't even worry about it. Just say, oh, hey, it's Loz here. I just wanted to reach out and let you guys know that I'm really looking forward to this week. It's not too much happening outside the norm in the gym, but if you need anything, just know that I'm here. If you can make it this Saturday, I'll see you then, right? Just something so simple. And then the next week, it gets a little bit easier. You remember something else that you can say. But when I started to do that, what I found was that my staff started to feel like they were part of a team. And also, they started to approach me, and I felt like the communication between us was better because they thought I was more approachable. And I guess I had created this tool where it was easier to reach out. So communication is super important. And the better you are at communication, it can lead to, like I said, better productivity, better collaboration, and a team dynamic, and also this synergy. But if you're not communicating, it leads to misunderstandings and conflicts and people getting annoyed at each other. And then the lack of collaboration, when you're saying, oh, I've just asked someone to volunteer, or someone's sick and I need them to cover, and then somebody no one covers, no one puts their hands up. There's just crickets on the other end. But the more you communicate and you have that expectation, I think is key here, that expectation that they communicate back and at least acknowledge your message, then I guess it's easier for you to be a leader, to manage your business. And I'm just going to highlight that. I want to write that down myself, actually. That's a good lesson right there, is expectations. And I always talk about when you're hiring people is like, have a list of expectations of not what's on the tasks of their role description, but the expectations of what you want within your organization, which will subsequently lead to culture. So in my expectations, one would be, you must communicate. If I ask the team a question, all I need you to do is acknowledge. And half the time these days, a simple thumbs up emoji is acknowledgement. You know that, or you hope that they've read the message at least. I used to write emails actually, and then in the middle of the email somewhere, I would ask a question for them to then respond to, and by a certain date, just randomly thrown in the middle of the email. This was probably one of my more poor leadership styles, but as I've evolved, but I knew within a week, if certain people hadn't responded, they hadn't actually read my email or the whole email. So maybe don't try that one. I don't necessarily think it's the right technique. A bit old school. But another reason, I think, when it's time to change staff members or, your team, is when there's this lack of alignment. When we start to make change, actually, I'll add two there. There's lack of alignment and resistance to change. Because, for example, maybe you're putting a price increase into your business services, and maybe one of your team members they've really got their back up about this. They don't understand, the population's really struggling financially, rah. But you, from a business perspective, know that with inflation and with all the costs that your businesses are undergoing, there's massive increases. And if you don't put up your bottom line, well, you're not going to succeed as a business. And therefore, that person's not even going to have a job. Not to mention, their pay keeps increasing, as it should, because they're worth it. And that's just another way to explain why you might have to do a price increase. But I think also value. You need to obviously highlight the value of your organization. But when your staff members start to, push back on any sort of visions or goals that you guys have, or they're not interested in adapting to new strategies and processes, it really can hinder your growth and innovation. This happened a lot for me when I owned the first gym. I don't really tolerate it so much anymore. I think back then I was in that place as a new leader and a new business owner where I wanted everyone's opinion, and I still do. I appreciate everybody's opinions and perspectives because I think that's important. But I think I've gotten better at outlining my vision and sharing that with the team. And getting their buy-in to that vision is super important. So if you do have that resistance to change, the last thing you want is that person going to the clientele and going, yeah, I don't know why they're doing a price rise. It doesn't make sense. And it can really damage your business. So that's something to be very aware of and not to tolerate. Another thing I think is lack of engagement. And this happens a little bit too. Obviously being mindful of what your staff members are going through personally, and not everyone's going to be comfortable sharing that with you, and that's okay. But we do have to remember that they're just humans as well, and we all go through ups and downs. But when the team members are disengaged or there's that lack of enthusiasm for work, it can really bring the whole team around them down, and it impacts productivity and the overall culture of your team. So maybe that's something to consider. I mean, obviously, I would have a conversation with them first to find out what's going on. But, if this is happening over a long period of time, that certainly isn't the vibe that I want from my team. Missing deadlines or targets. Everyone's going to be a little bit different on this. But I believe if your team consistently misses deadlines or fails to meet targets, that's a sign that they're not either equipped to handle the workload, or maybe there's even inefficiencies in the team structure and even in the process. Maybe they're not getting the follow-up that they need and that accountability, or they've never been held accountable. So in their mind, it seems like they don't have to hit the targets or the deadlines because there's no consequences necessarily. And one, when you've got a small business, your customers are going to tell you, and this has happened, if you invest time in getting to know your customers and talking, now, that I am a chatty Cathy. So I will literally talk to anybody. When I'm up at the coffee shop, I could mess up the actual coffee order, but I will know everything about them, where they live, what they're up to that weekend. And we've developed, a really good rapport. And I just love talking and making conversation. And it's the same in the gym, like getting to know my members and things. I would walk the floor for like 2 hours talking to everybody, probably not achieving much other than building rapport, which is so important. But what happens in those situations is these clients or customers, they will give you feedback. And in fact, these days, most people will give you feedback on Google Business, Facebook, or, Yelp or whatever they're using, because they can hide behind the negative feedback. I prefer for someone to actually come direct to our customer service team or to myself. So if you have a team member or a staff member's performance that's negatively impacting customer satisfaction and the reputation of your business, it's time to reassess the team dynamics right there. And like I said, in my recent case, this was important and part of the reason that person no longer works for us. And I was just talking about this to one of my mentees the other day, is when that team member is no longer growing with your business. And what I mean by that is sometimes your business is scaling up to the next level, and it's okay for their journey to end right there. And maybe that's because they no longer have the knowledge or the skills to take you to the next level. Because this is when you need to hire, people that will point you in the right direction. They have the more advanced skills. You might need higher management, more technical trades, whatever it may be. And I think that's okay. And I talk about that in relationships too. So both business and relationships, people can get you from point A to point B, but unfortunately, they're not always the people that will get you from point B to point C. And I think we've got to remember that. And we get so nervous about letting somebody go because it's so hard to find someone else. But if you don't have the right team, you aren't going to succeed, and you're most certainly not going to grow. It's so important. At the end of the year, I always interview my staff, always. I just individually for a good hour, usually as well. And this is when I get to know them and how the year has gone. I ask them how they think the year has gone for them. I want to know what they think we did well as a team, maybe what they think we could do better as an organization. But also for them, what they think they did well, what they think they'd like to improve on, if they want to try different areas or departments within the organization, or if they even want to upskill or learn, new departments. And I also want to know what their plans are for the following year. And at the end of that meeting, I take all those notes and I'm like, thanks for coming, kind of thing. And I leave it there because at the beginning of every year, I like to set up a new contract. And that could be new pay grades, it could be new positions, it could be complete restructure. And this one year, which was about 3 or 4 years ago, I kept the same team, but I literally restructured in that I changed their positions entirely. And the reason I did that was because after listening to them and their needs for lifestyle, university, and their time availability, I realized that they couldn't do what they were doing and their passion lied somewhere else within the business. So we did like a bit of a flip, and same team, like I said, and it was the best thing that we could have done. I really liked that, and I really liked the flexibility that everybody had, and nobody felt like they owned a position. They just knew they were part of a team. Their skills, their experience was still recognized, and they were listened to allow them to live, their best life, I suppose, and find that balance so that they could manage everything. And I think I'm quite chuffed that they still wanted to stay with us, even though they were under pressures in certain areas of their life. So I adapted the contracts to meet their needs. But the key thing here is the only reason it worked was because it aligned with my business needs. I think that's something to always consider, when you're thinking about hiring somebody, firing somebody, moving somebody to a different position, buying something new for your organization or your business. It's like, does it help me reach my goals for the business? Does it improve or value add to my business? And they're all the type of questions that I will always ask. And it's the same with friendships too. Is this person just sucking everything out of me and always wanting something to help them level up, or are they giving back and helping me in my times of need? Is there a mutual relationship there? Because we all know it. We've all had those people that seem to always take from us, and we feel like we're constantly giving, and your energy is completely drained. And I know for me, when that happens, I I definitely take a break. I need to distance myself just that little bit. So there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be obstacles with, building your team. But as I said, there's just not always room for everybody to get you where you're going. And firing someone or ending their contract is just one of those tough conversations that no one likes to have. But you just have to consider the needs of your business, your team, and importantly, your vision as well. When we made that restructure, the members at the time were happy because there was no specific change to them. There was no change to them because, when you have a client or a customer, they're always looking at how, if you make a change, how does that impact me? And in our particular case, it didn't. But the staff were happier, it was better productivity, improved communications, the members were happy. And I also listened to their personal and professional needs. And we made it a priority that year to upskill them. So we put in a whole staff development program, which is important because you want your staff to grow personally and professionally. I think as leaders, we should always be mentoring our staff and allowing them to level up. And I remember quite a few years ago, one of my mentors said to me, I think I was probably being a little bit too controlling of my business and maybe not even listening to my staff as much as I should have. Another good lesson right there. And she said, get out of the way of your own success. And I remember that, and I'm like, ugh, you're right. And so I let go of something that I wasn't comfortable with letting go. And it was the best thing that I did because I wasn't the person on the ground anymore. I wasn't that, the front of house anymore. So I didn't know exactly what the customer needs were. And the person I gave this new task to that I was holding on to for dear life, they did know the customer and what they needed. So it was actually like bringing life back into the business, in some ways. I guess if you're wanting to buy back time, you've got to let go of certain things. And it's okay for someone to mess up, just like you have the whole, along the way as well. And this happened with me. A staff member made an arrangement with someone. It was an agreement, ended up costing us about $3,000, of which we thought it was only going to be about $1,000. I was like, oh my gosh, what have you done? He goes, I can't believe it. I'm sorry. I'm like, we need this stuff in writing. He goes, I'm mortified. I'm like, I get it. And what that was a $3,000 lesson. He will never do it again. He knows how he could fix it again. And we learned a big lesson of how not to do business. But it was a good lesson. And I didn't get rid of him, obviously, because I had invested that $3,000 into his mistake. And someone had said that on a podcast. So I'm kind of re-saying what I learned from what they had said. And anyway, it's a good way of looking at it. But anyway, don't be afraid of letting go of tasks so that you can, one, level up, but you're also then allowing your staff to level up. And if you don't let them grow, you're always going to be managing that business down to the micro details, of which you can't afford to do if you want to scale up or grow your business. And your staff will always rely on you if you are always there. I think the big thing for me is that my leadership has changed significantly by getting out of the way of my own success. And if I think back to my leadership style back in the day, the only leadership style I knew was the way that the army taught me, which was a very authoritative, leadership style. And I used to cringe at the person I was sometimes when I had to be that leader in an authoritative, position. Now I get it on the battlefield, but I mean, in the workplace and in the office, it just absolutely wasn't necessary. And I'm going to cringe at some of the conversations that I've had because they didn't go too well. But that's all I knew. And of course, that wouldn't fly today. If I was to speak to my staff the way I did, then I wouldn't have any staff. But along the way, I've been influenced by some extremely incredible, I would call some of them mentors, but, they were my leaders. And I've taken these styles away. And, I guess as we grow, I'm learning from them that it's not about being authoritative. You'll all have your own style. And, there's a great book by John Maxwell called The 5 Levels of Leadership, which I always talk about, is I believe that you do need to be a different level of leadership for individual team members. They need you to be a different level of leader, depending on their age, the experience, and their background. And I think that's important to know, is that you will have to be different for every person, but you also need to know what level you're at so that you can keep helping them grow and become, get more responsibility and become the better leaders as well. And as my mentor said, get out of the way of your own success. I guess at the end of the day, it comes back to who you surround yourself with. It doesn't matter whether it's business. It doesn't matter if it's in the office or at home. Those people matter. Your people matter. Whoever you surround yourself with. I say this all the time. So don't be afraid to cut ties or let people move on. I think you need to remind yourself that you're actually doing them a favor also. Anyway, I appreciate you listening in. So if you enjoyed any of my episodes previously, or even this one, maybe, please hit the subscribe button, or better still, I would absolutely be chuffed if you wrote me a little review or a quick message. So thank you for that. And until next time. Thank you for joining us on the Sisterhood Collective podcast. Remember to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. And if you want to be the first to hear what is new at Sisterhood Collective, you can find out more on our Instagram, or you can sign up to receive our weekly newsletter and let the good times continue to roll. Now it's time